Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lust, the Pond Boss. Let's get this party started. Let's go live and see if we can have a little bit of fun. Answer some questions. I didn't see what the introduction is that Leanne wrote. I can't see it. Well, you know what? What I told her to write about was, let's talk about how to interpret a fisheries report. So, let's say you have your lake analyzed. And you hire a company, they come out, they do the electrofishing survey, they check your water chemistry, they do what they do, and they're all a little bit different. Some of them want to dig into the water chemistry deeply, some of them want to look at the fisheries deeply, some of them want to analyze the aquatic plants, some want to do all the above. So what do you do when you get that report? Well, if the report's written well, you're going to get data. So it's really hard to make decisions unless you've got really, really good data. So when you hire that firm, that company, the pond management company, to come analyze your lake, be sure and give them a list of goals. Hello, John Henry. Good to see you, buddy. Glad you're here. We got 8 viewers so far. Looks like. So, well, we're off to a start at the rate of a runaway glacier. Oh, somebody's already dropped off already. Two people have already dropped off. Hey, don't bail out yet. We're gonna have a good time. So you hire a company, and they need to know your goals first of all. And all the good ones, they're gonna ask you, what's the mission? How would you like for it to be? What are your goals? What are your long-term goals, short-term goals? So I like to lay that out there right in front before I ever go analyze a lake. What are we doing? If we don't have a mission, then we don't really know what we're going to get to. Hey, Wayne, good to see you, buddy. Walter called me today. He said the fish truck showed up in Arkansas today to get loaded, and they sold all their fish for this week. So it looks like we're all going to be bumped back. I've got 2 or 3 folks getting fish coming off of this next load, so we're going to have to just hang in there because we're kind of at the mercy of some of these big fish farms. Bird dog. There's the bird dog cup. Gosh dang it, I meant to get Leanne to do a drawing today. I'll have her do that tomorrow. I'll have it for you next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, by the way, I'm going to be in a hotel somewhere in Minnesota. I'm going to go to Bob Robinson's retirement party. Bob and I have been friends for over 35 years. He spent the last huge portion of his career working at Casco Aeration. So anyway, analyzing a lake. How do you interpret that report? Hello, Steve Thorburn, Mike Cottrell, good to see you guys. So, what's prompted that question is I had a phone call late this afternoon from a longtime friend and a former customer back when I was in the full-time pond management business company. And he had a firm come out and analyze his lake, and he wanted me to look over that report and give him some ideas. Well, so here's the backstory on this lake. And then I'm going to tell you about the report. Then I'm going to try to coach you up a little bit on how do you analyze that report. Hey, Mike Cottrell has got it. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like, share this video to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a very cool bird dog cup. I don't know how it knows, but it keeps cold things cold and hot things hot. It's got a memory. It's not a Yeti, but it's a polar camel. Okay. So anyway, he sent me that report a few days ago, and I had a chance to read it today. And here's what the report basically said. It says your water chemistry is great. You've had too many aquatic plants for the last 2 or 3 years. You need to manage the plants. And he had reported to them that the aquatic plants, mostly bushy pondweed with some American pondweed, covered more than 45 to 50% of the lake basin. And for those of you that follow this show a lot, or once, that's way, way more than what we'd like to have. We like to have somewhere between, we want 20 to 30% of the basin of the pond, mostly peripheral, to be, good. Wayne's seeing a bunch of fathead minnow fry. That's excellent. I was hoping they'd be spawning by now. So, putting those bluegill off a few days is not necessarily a bad thing. Get those fatheads a chance to really grow. So, anyway, he had built this lake back in 2016, stocked it in 2017, was catching some 4-pound bass by 2020, and all was good. Then the lake loaded with aquatic plants, the water got crystal clear, and they really didn't manage it, and they didn't cull any fish. So fast forward now, this company analyzed it in November of last year and is sending the report there in early December. So keep in mind, they analyzed the lake, electrofished it. This is in north central Texas, kind of southeast of Dallas. And they did it in November, which is a little bit late in the year to really get a good sample, especially trying to catch big fish. They didn't catch any big fish. They electrofished a pretty good number, probably 60 bass, most of which had a relative weight that topped off at 102, but most of them were 90 to 85% relative weight. The smallest one, the skinniest one, was 80%. So that's probably a male that was at least 6 years old. So their recommendations, well, here's what they saw. They saw some pretty good numbers of adult bluegills in the 6 to 8 inch size class. Now, this lake owner had fed his fish the first 2 years, and then one of the feeders broke, and the ranch manager was paying attention to the cows and not really dialed in on the fish management, and they were busy living life like they do. You know, hello, Kenny Sanderson. Hello, Doug Cusick. Yes, I'm live on Tuesdays now. Tuesdays from 6:30 to 7:30 on Tuesdays. I'm going to try to do every Tuesday, but maybe so, maybe no. I'll be 69 next week. I don't know what that's got to do anything, but it might be I can give myself permission not to do every Tuesday. I'll try to let you know, though. So for now, I'm going to do Tuesdays. Next Tuesday, I'll be in Minnesota. So anyway, electrofishing this lake, they came upon 0 small bait fish. All they found were adult bluegills and overcrowded bass, mostly in the 10 to 14 inch range. They did not electrofish any big fish. Well, this landowner was troubled. He's convinced, and he kept asking me over and over and over, where's my big fish? Where are my big fish? Well, they electrofished it in November, and they can electrofish 6 feet deep. I'm going to tell you they were probably 8 feet deep. I don't know, but I know this. If I'm in that boat and looking at it, I can give you a really, really good idea as to what the fish population is really like based on what we catch. Now, just because we don't capture some 4 or 5 or 6 pound bass doesn't mean they don't exist. You know, I kept trying to tell him that, and he wasn't quite wrapping his brain around it. Jason Nebstad, I see you, buddy. I will bring that up in a minute here. So the report recommended that this is a 15-acre lake, by the way. That's important. The last 2 years, it's been heavily choked with bushy pondweed with some American pondweed because they haven't managed it. And the majority of the fish are overcrowded, underweight bass. Surprise. We see that. I told him today, I see that 99 times out of 100. So when I write a report, typically I draw the conclusions. How did the lake get like this? Then I give some solutions. This particular company recommended that said, hey, dude, you're totally out of bait fish. You need to stock 30,000 small bluegills. You need to buy 3 feeders with this particular fish food. You need to buy these other fish, these medium-sized bluegills. Bottom line was they recommended that he buy $20,000 worth of bait fish to replenish the fish that should be there if the lake were balanced and healthy. Now, they also did recommend that he harvest a bunch of bass. They even recommended that they could bring their electrofishing boat back and help him with that. So, he called me for a second opinion. You know, I guess if I was diagnosed with heart disease, I'd want to call one of my friends that's a cardiologist and say, hey, another opinion? So, here's my opinion. So how are you going to interpret that report? How do you know? You know, if the report isn't concise, it explains things like they should. And when I say that, I like to say, okay, if the report tells you, here's the status of your fishery, here's how it got there, Now, you've got several options to choose to fix it. You know, you can go money whip it, write a great big check. I think after all the recommendations were in, it was recommended that he spend but between buying feeders, and fish, somewhere to the tune of $25,000. Well, if you got an extra $25,000 laying around in your hip pocket, maybe you can, maybe you would, but does that solve the problem? So number one, here's your number one tip. When you get an electrofishing report or a fisheries report, study how it got there. How did they get that conclusion? You got to have good data. And then how do you draw those conclusions? What got that lake from where it was to where it is now? Because I know this, if that guy goes and spends 25 grand on fish and feeders without figuring out what the problem was to get the lake to that point, he's urinating money. You know, which in some cases, maybe that's smart. But I know this, he didn't buy into the conclusions as to how his lake got to where it is. All that report said was, here's the status. The lake is overcrowded bass, and all the bait fish are gone, except for some adult bluegills. There's the status. But what it didn't say was, how did it get like that? The lake was built in 2016. Here we are. This was in November of 2023. In that 7-year span, how did that lake get from being built, stocked properly, catching 4 and 5 pound bass in the 4th year to where it is today? How did it get there? That's the problem. So here's the point. You got to figure out the problem before you can choose the right solution. So one of the solutions is unpickle the pickle. Not easy to do. You put a cucumber in vinegar, it's a pickle. So where I'm going with that is it got there because the lake had too much aquatic plants, which didn't make the food available to the bass. And then when the plants all died in the wintertime and sunk to the bottom, there wasn't enough cover for those bait fish, and the bass gorged themselves without gaining a whole lot of weight because the bass are crowded. So unless you uncrowd the bass, make the lake more productive by minimizing the amount of vegetation and managing where you keep it. In other words, get a plankton bloom going, especially in Texas. If you can get a plankton bloom going, make sure that your bass numbers have been reduced with a good harvest plan. Make sure you got enough adult bluegills, then you can start to turn the lake around. So interpreting a report is this. You got to have data. That's number one. From that data, you got to know your goals. That's number one as well. You got 2 number ones here. The third number one is, how did it get like that? So if you can answer those questions, then you can begin to come up with a management strategy to make it a whole lot better. Holy cow, we're already 15 minutes in. Hey, Jason Knipp said, I'm thinking about stocking our lake with ghost shrimp from a lake nearby if legal. My thought is maybe they will give the bluegill more forage since they don't get big here. You know what? I'm going to tell you my thoughts. Hey, Gil, good to see you. Hey, John Moore. Michael Gray's checking in. I bet he's on a piece of heavy equipment because it's still daylight. Hello, Joel from Clinton, Louisiana. Trey Carpenter. Yeah, he knows about Minnesota. I see my good friend Fred Bingaman checking in from Brownstown, Illinois, or probably St. Louis, Missouri. Okay, so Jason, here's a really, really important point about these different things to do with. I love ghost shrimp. I love grass shrimp. I love any kind of copepods. I love all that. If you've got the habitat and the food chain to support those animals, they're going to thrive and they can become a key cog or a key link in the food chain. But keep in mind, anytime you're trying to manage a fishery and you want to do something to enhance it, you have to enhance what that enhancement needs. What I mean by that is ghost shrimp, they're thriving in that nearby lake because of why? Why? And when you go get them, you're going to see why. They've got the right plants to eat. They've got the right water chemistry. See, the thing about ghost shrimp and any kind of crustaceans like that, they have an exoskeleton. That's a pretty fancy word. I think I need to go look that one up. Oh, wait. They have a shell. Crawfish, shrimp. That shell comes from what they eat. What they eat has to have calcium carbonate in order to build that shell. So that's water chemistry. So if you got the right water chemistry and then you got the right food chain for ghost shrimp, and you can stock them and they can thrive and establish, great decision, go do it. Especially if it's legal. If it's not legal, rethink, reset, redo. So if you've got all the elements that they need, and you know, I tell you something else real important when it comes to stocking something like ghost shrimp, you want to put them in the part of the lake where you know that they have a chance to thrive and survive. Because if you just go buy a bunch of, or go seine a bunch, or trap a bunch of ghost shrimp and you move them in there, and you just turn them loose, odds are that they're going to get eaten within 30 minutes of the time that you drop them off in the boat ramp, because you didn't turn them loose in places where they could go hide and eat and thrive. And then begin to reproduce. So here's the goal with something like ghost shrimp. You want them to establish. The only way they can establish is if they can reproduce. The only way they can reproduce is if they've got the right food chain. In this case, it's going to be plants and detritus and, you know, leaves rotting on the bottom of the lake, whatever, and the ability to spawn in the right water chemistry. If you got all that, you stand a pretty good chance at success. I'm real proud of that answer because it's right. Let's see here. You have primrose and alligator weed. You know what? I think those, Jason, I think that those ghost shrimp, I think they do pretty well in that alligator weed for sure, because they can get up in that shallow water, escape being preyed upon except by birds. And alligator weed's thick enough with enough cover that they could actually get up in that and probably do pretty good. So when you go get some, be sure that you turn some loose together, like in a colony, in some of that alligator weed. Do that. So let's see what we got going on here. How many guys? We got 35 viewers, 14 reactions, 18 comments, and 1 share. All right, so we're at 6:47. I haven't really thought much farther ahead of a topic other than interpreting a fisheries management report. Hello, Leah. Good to see you. Ooh, that rhymed. Hey, Leah, good to see you from Beggs, Oklahoma, up near Tulsa. So, vodka tonic. I like that. I can't remember the name of the tonic. It's elderberry flavored, so it has a little flavor with some lime juice today and water. I don't want to show you this cup because it's pink. All right, so interpreting a fisheries report. So when I said interpret the data, all right, so let me tell you about the data. That's a big deal. Hello, Wyatt from Denver, Colorado. Here's what data means to me. The better analyzers of lakes and ponds are going to give you some lengths and weights of some of your fish, especially the predator fish. They're going to weigh and measure those largemouth bass. We need to know that. So then we look at the lengths and weights of your largemouth bass, and we compare that to standard. And a lot of the good reports actually have a curve on there where you can see and how your fish compare to standard lengths and weights of largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, walleye, crappie, yellow perch, whatever it is, even bluegills. And if you don't have a spreadsheet where you can plug your numbers in, let me know. Just send me an email, and I will forward you a spreadsheet that Jim Allen from Kentucky put together for us. He took one I had that was kind of primitive, and he upgraded it. So there's several species of fish on it now, and he dolled it up really, really well. So the data, you want to see lengths and weights of your largemouth bass, in this case, from this guy today. And you also want to see the size ranges and the size classes. So in other words, if you can plot the lengths of your fish, it should be a bell curve. So in other words, you got, this many 10-inch bass, this many 11s, 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s, 18s. And if you got a sweeping wide bell curve, that's what you're after. So you're looking at the length distribution of your fish compared to their relative weights. And there's almost always a correlation. When Dave Weber's constantly perplexed by ponds I see in my area that seem to have a zillion bluegill of all sizes that never seem to grow any largemouth over 4 pounds. Oh, I know that. Heck, let me answer that one here in a minute. Hello, Eric Collerman from Beaumont, Texas, down on the Gulf Coast. So when you're looking at this data, you're looking at two things. You're looking at length distribution or size distribution compared to relative weights. There's almost always a correlation. When you see like this fisheries report today, it didn't have the graphs on it, but I could tell by looking at the data that there were a lot of fish stacked up in the 10 to 12 inch size class, and they're all underweight. Well, that bell curve went like this, with a whole bunch of fish, numbers in the 10 to 12 inch size class, instead of being a sweeping bell curve. The other thing you look at is what are the relative weights of all the different size classes of fish. So if you look at an 8-inch bass and an 18-inch bass and all the fish in the middle, if they're all chunky and fat, then you're pretty close to a balanced state. Typically, that's not what you see. Typically, you see a certain size class of fish that are underweight. Those are the ones that are overcrowded. Then the second thing you look at, data-wise, where one of the conclusions in this particular report was that the lake is out of bait fish. No bait fish to be found. They found one size class of bluegill, and from the pictures that I looked at, there were hundreds of bluegill that were 5 to 7 inches long, but 0 smaller than that. Well, that's a clue. That clue means that all the young fish are getting eaten pretty much as soon as they come off the nest. So it's not so much not so much the fact that the small bluegill numbers are gone, it's the fact that there's too many mouths eating them. And the little analogy I gave this landowner today, it was he lives in Dallas, so I said, it's kind of like, remember the Luby's cafeterias? We don't see very many of those anymore. It kind of tells you my age. But if the SMU football team, yes, SMU has a football team, came to a Luby's to eat, and the kitchen wasn't putting stuff on that buffet line all day long, they're going to run out of food. And then the football team is going to start losing weight. Well, his bash of the football team and the Luby's kitchen has run out of food because they can't cook it fast enough in that lake. So there's not enough big bluegill spawning enough to be able to support that number of bass. So the answer is to reduce the numbers of bass, figure out how to make the lake more productive, get the kitchen more productive to be able to grow more small bluegill. Not necessarily go spend $25,000 buying bait fish to put in it. Because if you do that and you don't change other things, something else is going to happen. So there you go. So when you're interpreting that report, be sure to look at the data. And if they don't give you enough data, call them out on it. Because they can't give you good conclusions and make good recommendations. And also beware of reports that only give you one recommendation. This particular report only had one recommendation, and that was buy a lot of fish, buy a lot of feeders, buy a lot of feed from me. That's what the recommendations were. They didn't give you many other choices. They didn't draw conclusions as to how the lake got that way. They just drew conclusions about the status of the fishery at that moment that they analyzed it. So, hey Wyatt, I see your question. Let me back up here a minute. All right, Dave Weber. I am constantly perplexed by the ponds I see in my area. And I got to know where Dave Weber is. Dave Weber lives up northeast of Kansas City, Missouri. They have a zillion bluegill of all sizes that never seem to grow any largemouth bass over 4 pounds. That's because the dynamics are disproportionate. Because here's what happens in the Midwest. Bluegill don't spawn as many times there as they do, say, in Texas or even southern Oklahoma and Arkansas. And I tell you what, if you draw a line from like Oklahoma City through Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Nashville, and then up the eastern seaboard into the Carolinas, south and east of that line, going to get 3 or 4 spawns of bluegill every year. What that means is you wind up with a whole bunch of little bitty bluegills that can support certain sizes of bass that are smaller on up. So what happens is that you end up with bluegill that are dominating the food chain. And when you get a lot of bluegill that are in that 3 to 5 inch size class, and not enough bass there that can eat them that size, which tells me in northwestern Missouri, northeastern Kansas, largemouth bass can't eat the bluegills to the point that they have enough food before the bluegills outgrow the mouth size of those bass. And Kenny Sanderson, I'm sure Kenny has seen that because he's up in western Kansas and way up in northwestern Kansas. So I'm sure he sees that as well. So there's two reasons that largemouth bass don't get over 4 pounds in those small ponds. First of all, the bait fish outgrow their mouth size. The second one is they stay at 10 to 12 inches too long. You know, you think about it, if they stay at 10 to 12 inches, 13 inches, 14 inches for 3 or 4 years, then their top end propensity might be 4 pounds. You know, and so it's a function of not having enough of the right bait fish at the right stage of that bass's life, and the bass don't have enough food to make them grow as fast as they need to grow to hit that 4 pound mark fast enough. So, I may be wrong on that. But that's what I'm going to tell you tonight. Let's see here. Let me back up a little bit, make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't think I have. Yep. All right. So here we go down here. Wyatt, can you touch on water quality and clarity? We had a large drawdown last year, now coming back up. Not sure if that's the culprit. The tank was clear, and I don't believe there's anything in there that would be causing it, i.e. trash fish. Hey, Elena, what are you doing, girl? Good to see you. Glad your daddy's got you tuned in tonight. He sent me some pictures with you girls, you and your sister catching some pretty big bass. So proud of you girls. You know what? Elena and her sister, the Brinkman family, live outside of St. Louis, Missouri. And, you know, Chuck's a good working guy. He's in the cabinet making business. And they're raising their kids right. You know, they got those girls in the country. They're learning about fish, and those girls are excited about it. Like Elena, I don't know how old you are now, baby, probably 13 years old. The good old Luann platter from Luby's. We do know somebody that knows about Luby's. Okay, so Wyatt, I don't know what kind of trash fish you've got, but that would be causing it. Okay, touch on water quality and clarity. Okay, we had a large drawdown. Okay, so here's what happened to Wyatt. Wyatt has a ranch near Abilene, Texas. And that part of Texas is right on the edge of where it doesn't rain enough. So one thing to always think about, I don't care where you live, if you're not in a drought, you will be. And every single drought ends with a flood. Every one of them. I don't care what you think about that. That's the truth. A 2-inch rain will not break a drought. So in the summer of 2023, we had something like 120 consecutive days with no rain, with maximum evaporation, water temperatures or air temperatures in the 92 to 98 degrees, maybe hotter than that on a few days. So evaporation was pretty big. So over 90 days, water can evaporate as much as 4 feet over there where he is, where Wyatt is. So now we've had some pretty good rains. He said the tank was clear, and I don't believe there's anything that would be causing it. Oh, okay. Oh, I got it now. Okay, so I thought you were asking how trash fish can. I see what you're saying. You had a large drawdown. Now the water's back up, but it's not clear. The tank was clear. Okay, so what happens when a lake draws down? I'm gonna give you several things to think about here, because this is pretty cool. As a pond draws down, the fish become more concentrated and they adjust their numbers. In other words, what that means is the big fish eat the little fish. And so nature does everything they can to adjust the volume of the water and the size of the pond. And then in the meantime, all that dirt that was underwater is now subject to the environment, subject to the climate, subject to the atmosphere. And so there's some cleansing that goes on with that dirt. So the more it bakes in the sun, it's going to break down and compost a bunch of those nutrients that were formerly, silt or aquatic plants or organic matter, whatever it is. Then when the lake starts filling back up, it has a tendency to absorb those nutrients that have been composted, and create a plankton bloom. So now, if the water is turbid or has some color to it and it's kind of a green tint, that's a good, healthy thing, because that's a plankton bloom that's cranking up at just the right time to provide a good food chain for your bait fish. Now, if the water's muddy, that's very likely due to colloidal clay. So in other words, microscopic little pieces of clay that are lighter than water and have a tendency to suspend. Now, when you get fresh water coming in from a rain cloud, I feel like I'm fixing to sneeze. Whew. So when you get fresh water coming in from a rain cloud, that changes the water chemistry. Now think about this. When that water drew down, it drew down to evaporation, right? Raise your hand. Yes, correct. You got it. That's it, Wyatt. So when that water evaporates, the only thing that leaves is water. Everything that's dissolved in the water stays behind, which is all the metals, minerals, organics, whatever is in the water, in it, dissolved or absorbed in the water, that stays behind. And here to kind of look at the math on that so it makes more sense to you. Let's say you had 100 parts per million alkalinity when the lake was full. And if it dissolves down and loses half the volume, now you've doubled the minerals. So now you got alkalinity that's 200 parts per million. So what happens when it rains? It dilutes it again until that water sits on the soil and absorbs what it can absorb from the soil. And so as it does that, there's some chemistry things going on there with some biology things that's changing and altering the way that water is going to behave. Now keep in mind, water is a vehicle. That's all it is. You know, everything that's going on in the water is either chemical or biological, and both of those affect the other. So that's a long-winded answer to tell you that I don't know why your pond's muddy. If it's muddy. But odds are, if it's been clear before, it's going to clear up again. Oh, man, I just did a PhD in nothing. Hello, Michael Eric from Iowa. Okay, Leah, our 9-acre pond is nearly full. It should fill easily from the spring rains. Oops. We have the ability to send extra runoff into the pond. This diversion was built to help with the initial filling. Should we continue to have that extra runoff feed into the pond or just let it divert around the full pond? I feel like the watercolor and quality is happy and don't know if the extra water will hurt. Oh, that is really a good question. Nobody ever asks that question. So let me tell you this. When you've got a 9-acre pond and it's full and it looks great, any additional water is going to change it. It's going to alter the chemistry, which is going to alter the biology. So if you have the ability to allow new water to bypass your lake, and so if your water's happy and it's stable, don't change it. So if you've got the ability to let that water go around the lake, I'd do it. Because the thing is, here's what happens. When you get that fresh rain, that fresh runoff, it has to change the existing pond. It has to. There's no doubt about that. Oh, I got a text. Oh, there we go. All right, good deal. So I think it's a great idea. If your water is happy and stable and you want it to stay that way, sometimes rainfall can hurt it. The main thing you want rain for is to keep the lake full and flush it when necessary. There you go. There's a little tip. Don't make that come back to haunt me. Hey, there's Peyton. Peyton checking in from Louisiana during recent lake fishing surveys. I'm seeing something I don't normally see this, and that's fry-sized coppernose. They typically spawn down this early. No, they typically don't spawn this early here, but I've seen them in 3 lakes now. I'm not seeing any beds. The water's been in the high 50s, low 60s. Okay, let me tell you what's going on, Peyton. And Peyton's a wildlife biologist with a strong fisheries lean, and he's doing a great job over there. I've hung out with Peyton. I've spent time with Peyton. Peyton came to one of the Institute of Higher Pondology. Oh, that reminds me. I need to tell you about that. Hey, Peyton, I'm going to answer your question. Stand by. We've got the next 2 Institute of Higher Pondology scheduled. We're going to be at West Haven Ranch near St. Joe, Texas. $1,500 all in. That's food, lodging, hanging out with me, and making good friends and new friends for life. I guarantee you, Peyton Igo was at the last one we did about a year and a half ago, and he still is on a text thread with probably 3 or 4 guys that came to that institute because now they share ideas with each other, which I think is really, really cool. So if you want more details about the Institute of Higher Pondology, I'm going to limit the class size to no more than 15. We've got 5 people that have said they're coming. They haven't shown me the money yet, but I know all of them, and I think they're good for it. So we got 5 people signed up. I got room for 10 more. So let's see if we can get some more folks coming. I'll have a couple of guest speakers, a great curriculum. It's 2.5 days worth of a whole lot of fun, great education, hands-on, electrofishing, fish analysis. We're going to be tagging fish for a mark recapture study. Going to lay out some hatchery ponds for the West family there on their ranch. We'll be doing some aquatic plant analysis and some really good classroom time and great food. I promise you the food's great. So, all right, so now, Peyton, let me tell you what's going on this year. And I bet you've seen this with the deer you manage. Are you seeing sheds 3 weeks before you should? This year, and I'm going to blame it on Punxsutawney Phil. The damn rat in Pennsylvania didn't see a shadow, which means that winter got cut short. So we've had spring 3 weeks earlier than normal. I've seen mesquite trees bloom or bud out. That doesn't happen unless we're not going to have another freeze around here. And everything is 3 weeks early. Bluebonnets, bass spawns, bluegill spawns, sheds from deer. Everything this year is 3 weeks earlier than normal. So typically when I see fry-size copper-nosed bluegill this year, that means we had some bluebird days in February, which we had some of that, but I'm telling you, everything is 3 weeks earlier than normal. And you're not seeing any bluegill on beds because they've already gone through their first round. They're going to be doing it again here in just a little bit. Looky there, Ron Ardoin. He's been to 2 of the Institute of Higher Pondologies, and he's going to come to the next one. And he's cussing at me right there. I love him. Okay, Leah, you agree. Good. That means we both agree. You agree with me, and I agree with me. And I agree with you. Look at there. Ron says he's coming to the next Institute of Higher Pondology. You know what? Y'all need to come. Just hang out with that guy. It's that South Louisiana Cajun. Dude, I'm telling you, his daddy can cook some bad food. I mean, great food. He doesn't even use roadkill. It's good stuff. Tyler, excited for the new trout magnet eye-hole jig to hit the market. My all-time favorite lure, catches everything. Well, I'm glad you got that plug in. Send me some of them. I mean, I got the river right here, and I know stripers are running up there. Throw me something they can catch. Hello, Jim Allen. We're just talking about you, buddy. Jim Allen says, any idea why Purina discontinued the bass nugget fish food? Yeah, I do know why. I'll tell you exactly why. Because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Because they're run by a butter company, and they don't communicate very well, and the people that make decisions like that aren't talking to people that use products like that. So it's a little bit aggravating, but I have been assured by people in the sales team are going to communicate with the decision makers above them because they made the decision to stop that without talking to anybody that uses it. And all they're looking at is numbers. And, you know, frankly, at Purina Mills and a lot of the big food manufacturing companies, specialty feeds like this can often be a stepchild. However, this industry is big enough to support good products. You know, and another little problem with the bass nuggets is they're about as big around as the end of your thumb. There's not very many feeders that will throw that feed out, so it's a little harder to sell it. But I've been told from a couple of the big dogs at Purina that they're going to see if they can't reinstate that and at least make a few batches every year because it's not that hard to do that with their with the way that they do their extrusion plants. Yep, Peyton, everything has been early. That's right. So the bluegill. Dave Prowlock, wish I could make it. I wish you could too. Peyton, look at there. The Institute of Higher Pondology is definitely something you don't want to pass on. I agree. It's really good. not only is it good for the information you get, it's good for the relationships that you build, because you build a network of relationships that help you going forward. Tyler Shockham Markley. I wish I worked for them, but plug for myself. Yeah. Once we get a dock installed in our neighborhood HOA pond, I want to push for a Texas feeder to raise some good. Yep. You know what? You can attract bluegill to a dock, and you'll get that. You'll get that house covey coming to that dock, and they're really, really big. Let's see. Okay, let's see here. Dave Weber, interested in your answer to Doug C's question above that you missed. Let me back up here. Where's Doug's question? How did I miss it? These things scroll. When you guys start asking questions, they scroll by me pretty fast. Let me see. I'm backing up. Doug. Oh, there it is. Doug. Oh, there it is. I see it. Pond is 10 years old next month. Happy birthday to your pond. 2 acres when it's full. It's leaked through the bottom since day one and never got sealed and probably lacking clay. And the dam is showing some water on the backside now, not at the drain pipe through the dam that I fixed before with bentonite. The dam was not core trenched and there was some debris compacted into the dam during build. Every bit of that's wrong, but you know that. I lose a half an inch every 24 hours and need a recommendation on someone to look at my situation in south central Kansas. Water table is high and the pond is only 10 feet deep. Deep at the deepest. All right, you know what I would do there? Look at soil flock. Go into the Pond Boss resource guide and look for soil flock and give them a call. Another thing you can do is go to the Pond Boss forum at pondboss.com and ask that question. Just copy and paste that question and ask it on the Pond Boss forum, and there will be people snatch that right up and throw out some other ideas. You know, the thing about products like soil flock, it's easy to apply. The problem with any of these amendments is to be able to hit the area that leaks. I've said this on the show before. It's, ask you this, what holds water better than anything on the planet? A bathtub, right? Except for that little bitty hole down in one end. And in the pond, how do you know where that hole is? Or is it a hole? Is it a vein? Is it a washing machine patch of gravel and sand together? You know, if you can figure out where that is, then you stand a better chance to solve it or to cure it. Hey, you know what? It's already almost 7:15. Let's do a commercial. Don't you love commercials? Pond Boss Magazine. There it is. Here's the latest one. Right there. $35 a year. Say it with me now. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Texas Hunter Feeders. I love those guys. Not only are their products great, their customer service is great too. I love those guys. And Purina Mills. You know, I've been an ambassador for them since 1996. Good gosh, what's that? 28 years. Is that right? Yeah, 28 years. Man, I had dark hair and dark beard back then. But I love their products. I don't like the fact that people make decisions that shouldn't make decisions without talking to people that know how to coach them through good decisions. Does that make sense? It kind of does to me. Bird Dog. That's my son's company. Bird Dog It. My son Jonathan. I'm really proud of all my kids. Mainly because I don't have to send them any money anymore. And they have grandkids, and that's pretty fun. I'll have to tell you some stories about some of those grandkids. I'll tell you one here in a minute. You'll laugh your asses off on this one. I learned how to be a grandparent from some of these kids. BirdDogIt.com. Jonathan came to me a couple of years ago. He says, Dad, I got an idea for a company. He said, what I'm thinking about is, he says, I'm in my early 40s. He was 40 at that time. He said, I'm raising kids. I don't have time for a deer lease. I don't really want to pay an outfitter, years in advance or a year in advance. And he said, I don't have any friends that own ranches. And if I want to go hunting, my choices are limited. I go to the Dallas Safari Club show or to the Texas Wildlife Association show, and I can book a hunt. But what if that weekend conflicts? He said, so here's my idea. I'd like to come up, create a company that's like a VRBO or an Airbnb for hunting, where I work it out with these landowners, and we can work with the landowners to be good stewards of their herds or good stewards of their property, help them derive a little bit of income, and provide hunting opportunities for guys like me, guys in their early 30s to their mid 50s or whatever. And so he used that business model, and he's carving out a pretty good niche for himself. He's now in his second year, and I think he's got 30 ranches that he's under contract. Some of them use outfitters, but he takes up the other spaces when they don't have hunts to maybe do a father-daughter meat hunt, or he's got several companies where he does helicopter hog hunts, but if you go to birddogit.com, you can take a look at it and see, because it's really, really pretty cool. Let me see if we got more questions, then I'm going to tell you a grandchild story that will make you laugh, I promise. Make sure I haven't missed anything here. Yep, all right. Let's see. Yep, got it. All right. Jim says, at least my turtles like the smaller available. Says, well, you know what? If it helped, it may help to write letters. It may help to send a letter. Man, I don't know who to send that to, though. The only people I know are those that are in our corner anyway. Lathram. Oh, your buddy okay, well, you know what? My son's pretty good at doing that, and his model makes good sense. Oh, is Steve Alexander on here? I know Steve Alexander. I talked to Steve a couple days. He rang my number. Got to talk to him for a few minutes. If Steve's on here. So let's see here. All right, let me tell you a grandchild story right quick. How I learned it. I learned a valuable lesson. If we have any grandparents out here. So when my son Jonathan turned 40, he and his wife have 3 kids. Now at that time, the little girl was a baby. So there we go. Hello, Steve. Can you give me your thoughts on Red Hill Farms Genetics? I've tried to call those guys, Steve, and they're not responsive to me. I don't know. I've called them 3 or 4 times, left messages, and they're just not calling me back. I think, you know what? I'm going to be driving some tomorrow. I'll see if I can call them again. I can't really offer up any thoughts on their genetics because I don't know enough about it. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on genetics. I'm not going to give you my thoughts on Red Hill genetics because I don't know. I'm not that smart, but I'm going to tell you this. And the way I come to these conclusions, it's just through, I'm in my 45th year doing this. So I've seen a lot of good stuff. And, with those experiences come conclusions. So to kind of set the stage for my answer, I've combined a bunch of different thought processes to come to this conclusion. Here's my conclusion. Genetics matter, but they don't. Oh, okay. You want me to explain that? Wes Shippey says they don't call anyone back. Okay, so we're in that camp. I'll call them again tomorrow and just see. I mean, they should call me back. Oh, there's another text. No, I don't know why they don't call me back. Anyway, let's say we take 2 AKC world champion Labrador retrievers and we breed them and we get a litter of 8 puppies. How many of those puppies are going to be great? Maybe none. Will there be a runt? Yes, there will. So just because the genetics have proven to produce champions doesn't mean that all those offspring from those genetics are champions. And here's what I've seen. I've seen this with pure strain Florida bass. I've seen this with the F1 crosses. I've even seen this with northern strain largemouth bass. Believe it or not, northern strain largemouth bass, if you go back and dig into the records for the state of Texas, you're going to find that some of the early records of double-digit fish were pure strain northern bass from Lake Merval back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, where those fish were caught over there, and there was no Florida genetic introduction in the state of Texas at all at that point. So here's where I'm going. Let's say we take 100,000 bass fry that are the best genetics, whether it's Red Hill, pure strain Florida bass from Florida, hatchery, whatever. Well, you can throw half of them in the trash right now because those are all boys. They're not going to get big. You know, a 3-pound male bass of any strain, any genetics is superior. Most of them are 12, 13, 14 inches, pound and a half at the most of them. So you take that other 50,000, which is 50% of the whole mass. Of those 50,000, there's going to be 20 or 25% that are going to have the propensity. They're going to have the aggressive nature, given the opportunity in the right environment, and not get eaten to reach their maximum sizes. Now, here's the problem. One of the problems is, let's say that you've got out of that 50,000, let's say you stock 1,000 bass in your 10-acre lake, Latham, for example. Let's say you stock 1,000 bass. 500 are girls, 500 are boys. Of those 500 girls, 150 of them are going to have what it takes in your lake if they don't get eaten and they have the opportunity. So what does that opportunity mean? That means they got to have all they can eat all the time throughout every stage of their life. If they have that, then they got a shot at 15 or 16 pounds, maybe even bigger. You know, so the odds, even though the genetics are fantastic, the odds are stacked against them. You know, and so that's the way I see it. So I can't give you an opinion on Red Hill because I don't know anything about Red Hill other than that they've had some disease issues and that they have and that they do everything indoors. Well, I don't know any 15-pound bass that grew indoors from 0 to 15 pounds. So Dave says, you need stocking with carp species, not on purpose. But you know what? I live on the Brazos River, and that is the dominant fish species in this river. So I tell you this, I'm starting to kind of feel my way through the river, understand the river a little bit better. I've been here now a couple of years, and my emphasis for my grandkids to catch fish is going to be on carp, common carp, because that's the fish that are the dominant fish here. So shame on me if I take my grandkids fishing and they strike out and they think fishing sucks because I didn't tie them into a 3-pound carp that looks like a long distance runner in a river. So I don't really stock any carp, but when I come across them, I try to conclude, do they have any value? And in most cases, they don't in private ponds and lakes, but you know, in a river, maybe they do, even though they're exotic. Andy Felix had a visit from an otter for the first time in my 2/3 acre pond with a 20-pound koi in my backyard. I was panicked. Took some break barrel shots at him, but saw him the next day, hired a pro trapper, nothing. Trapped and no sign in 1 week. Will they relocate when harassed or will they be back? They're opportunistic. Very rarely do they live where they hunt. They will travel up to a mile at night, is my experience. And, you know, I know they'll go a quarter of a mile at night because they'll hit your pond. They'll just run, they run their own trap line. So if you got a 20-pound koi, they'll love to chew the guts out of it, lay it up on your dock, and leave the remains for you to find the next day and be pissed. You know, so they will relocate when they're harassed, except they have a memory about, like, I probably will in another 10 years. My long-term memory will be good, but my short-term memory won't be so good. So they'll probably come back. So I would stay vigilant. Is that the right word? Yeah, vigilant. So I would stay vigilant. Okay, let's get back to the grandkid stuff. So I got invited to go hang out with my grandsons and my 2 grandsons. The baby girl was going to go. Jonathan turned 40. He and his wife, Kat, decided that, and Jonathan and his buddies all said, hey, we're going to celebrate your 40th birthday. So they flew out to Napa, California for 4 days, and my job was to sit with the 2 wild, I'm calling them feral Lusk boys. And they got my genes in them, so I can't really apologize for what I'm fixing to tell you because it kind of comes natural. I watched it happen. So Jonathan left me his truck, which had the car seats in it. So little Sam was, I think, 3 and Jackson was 5. Well, I had to pick them up from school. They were going to school at a Baptist church in Brenham at the time, and I had to pick them up by 5:30. If I didn't get them by 5:30, Jonathan and Kat got fined $5 a minute for every minute I was late. Well, Kat's great. She had all the food planned out. She had all their activities and all that stuff. This is a great story. Y'all are going to love this. I'm going to wrap up with this story. And so I got there on Thursday, picked them up Thursday night at 5:30. They had food in the crock pot when we were to get home. So I pulled up to the church, and I see Sam walking across the top of the swing set. I'm telling you, the kid's agile at 3 years old. And there was a teacher yelling at him to get down. Jackson, who's more of a bookworm, he was over reading a book beside his backpack. So I hollered at him, loaded him up right at 5:29 and a half. And I said, "Hey, boys, are you hungry?" "Yes, Papa, we're hungry." They call me Papa. So I piled them in, got them buckled into the seatbelt, said, "What would you guys like?" "We want Sonic." Great idea. I love that. So I took them to Sonic, asked them what they wanted. They told me, pushed the little red button. The girl comes on and, "May I take your order?" I told her. Shoot, 5 minutes later, those guys are eating chicken nuggets and hamburgers or whatever, wolfing down fries in the back. So most of the time when we go to Sonic, my nature is to get the food and then leave, but I thought, I'm going to stick around. So I stayed, and they finished scarfing down their food, and I said, "You guys still hungry?" "Yeah, can we have another one?" I said, "Sure we can." So I pushed the little red button, ordered another round. And now they ate about half of it, so I knew they were pretty full, so it was time to go home. So I headed home, drove about, 20 miles to get to their house. They live on 28 acres out between Brenham and Navasota, Texas. And I pulled up to the gate and rolled down the window. I'm in Jonathan's truck. So I punch in the gate code on the keypad to open the gate, and then all of a sudden I see daylight coming through the roof of the truck. Now look, it's the roof's open, and there's a kid standing there with his arms out and his head's out. And Jackson's escaped from his car seat, and he's already opened the sky thing up on the truck that I didn't even know existed. And he's got his arms out, and I'm looking at him, and I'm starting to pull in the gate, and all of a sudden I see two little bitty hands on the outside of the windshield sliding down, and there's Sam. He's escaped his car seat. He's sliding down on the hood of the truck while I'm pulling into the gravel driveway. So I'm thinking, dadgummit, you know what? If this was my kid, I'd hit the brakes, and that little fart would be scraping gravel out of his kneecaps. And they're not my kids, so I can't do that. So I stopped real slowly. I said, "Get your ass back in this truck." Sam climbed back up the windshield, scampered in. I made him shut that thing, and we drove on down, got to their house, let them in, and of course I've got instructions on what they can watch on TV and what time they need to go to bed and all that. Steve, love your heart. Oh, man, thank you, buddy. Hey, I'm telling you, it's my calling, dude. I'm telling you. Hello, Kevin Briggs. Good to see you, my North Carolina friend. So anyway, that night we're watching TV, and they don't have to go to school on Friday. So they're supposed to be in bed about 8:30. So about 10:30, the big one, Jackson, he says, "Papa, can we stay up all night?" I said, "Jackson, I think that's a great idea." Now, Sam has been laying on me. We're watching Grizzy and the Lemmings. If you've never seen that show, you need to watch it. It's 7 minutes worth of cartoon where all they do is grunt and try to kill a bear. Perfect for little boys to watch. And so, in a minute, Sam's conked out. About 11:30, Jackson says, "Papa, what time is it?" And I said, "Buddy, it's 2:30 in the morning. You're almost there." And man, he can't keep his eyes open. Finally, a little bit after midnight, he says, "Papa, what time is it?" I said, "Jackson, you made it to 5:30 in the morning." He goes, "Yes, we made it all night." And then he was out. They didn't wake up till 9 o'clock. And then we had a great few days. And then I didn't care what they watched as long as it was not bad, in my opinion. I didn't tell them what time to go to bed. Well, Jonathan and Kat get back on Sunday night. And the first thing Jackson does is rat me out. He says, "Mama, Papa let us stay up all night long." When she cut her eyes around at me, and I said, "Nah, I'll tell you later." So she got the kids were happy to see her. She got everybody all settled in, and right there toward the end of the evening on that Sunday, she said, "Tell me the story." So I told her. She says, "Well, you know what? I think that's great. I knew they couldn't stay up all night." She says, "None of this stuff bothers me except one thing." And I said, "What's that?" She says, "Why do they have on the same clothes they had on when we left them with you Thursday night?" I forgot to make them